big Zilean bomb that explodes when the countdown is done. That's what we're looking out for. We got it. Zilean, create 4 time bombs in your deck, then predict. So you have to predict to find the time bombs. He's 2 mana. He's 2 mana. Oh yeah. Time bomb. When I'm summoned, draw 1 and advance other allied time bombs 1 round. Countdown 1. Deal 1 to enemies and the enemy nexus. So there's sort of like, it deals 1 to everything, right? Basically everything on the opponent's side. So it's sort of like Jinx's rocket, except less damage to the nexus. That's interesting. So the time bombs can chain.
It is now as it would be then.
They just countdown 1. There's gonna have to be some bigger landmark to advance then. So Zilean is predict synergy. It's about predicting the bombs from your deck instead of advancing them. So where's the advance synergy? It's gotta be here.
Time waits for no one. No one but me.
Okay, leveled Zilean. Create a fleeting copy of each non-fleeting card I saw you play last round. Okay, so each card, not just spells. We thought that the time manipulation of Zilean and Echo could be tied to basically allowing you to reuse spells, but it's everything here. It's everything. So when Zilean's leveled, you just get to replay all your cards every turn. And yeah, it's the same play effect.
Haven't I been here before?
Scrying Sands. Whoa, whoa. This is it. Is this the Shurima staple card that people were talking about? This card is nuts. Holy shit. 1 mana, burst speed, predict, and give an enemy -0 health and -2 attack. Somehow that word came out wrong. That's a fucking spell. There we go. Alright. Predict is looking a lot better. It's kind of like a troll chant. Sort of, yes.
I see you picked up a little
Basically
more than knowledge.
Facing certain doom, I had to be resourceful.
This is it.
We're on this timeline.
Let's go.
Zilean's looking pretty hot.
Remember,
I'm not gonna lie.
consent planning is never wasted. Time is a teacher to us all.
Of course it's atrocity. Alright. Let's see. Is there a couple more cards? Usually there's a couple more cards that aren't in that original video. Let's see it. Okay. So, there's Chronoshift. Don't think that was there. 7 mana. Give an ally a champion. The next time I'd die this round, fully heal me and grant me +3/+3 instead. So this is Zilean's ult from League of Legends. And of course it's Zilean's champ spell here. So yeah, it's 7 mana. It can save any champion and give it a permanent +3/+3 buff. For 7 mana, that's probably expensive, but there might be some kinds of all-in champion build arounds that are able to make that make sense. I'm gonna have to think about that with like all the champions of the game, because obviously something like Fiora could use this in a pretty scary way. Soothsayer, 2 mana 1/4. When I'm summoned, grant allied champions and landmark spell shield. This I think might be fairly big. Whoa, okay, that is a pretty crazy card actually. For 2 mana, grant allied champions and landmarks spell shield. It gives them all spell shield. So this I'm really happy to see. So here's something that's interesting about the reveals today is the reveals yesterday. We saw all these cards, the advanced cards that we still don't really know how to use, because it turns out the bombs are just countdown 1 and they're about predicting and not advancing, right? So there's still going to be some big advanced cards that we have yet to see. it's very possible that, for example, like people have said, like maybe Malphite starts as a landmark and you have to like do a big countdown to level him up and make him like a big scary unit or something like that. I mean, it's very possible that maybe it's, you know, some neutral followers or spell, you know, some kind of like bundle there, and maybe not Malphite specifically. But Soothsayer is a really important card because it gives your landmark spell shield, which means whatever the payoff for these advanced cards is, you will be able to protect it because you can give your landmark spell shield. And if your landmark has spell shield, the spell shield can only be popped by landmark removal, right? Like, so they will need double landmark removal. In theory, if Mono Shurima was to become a deck, and I do think Mono Shurima will be quite a bit better when Shurima has more cards. Probably not this expansion yet. It will probably be still a couple months from now. Still, they would need to get like all their cards. But when Mono Shurima makes a bit more sense, I could see a meta where you might want to play this to protect Sundisk. In addition to just being able to use it on champions is really nice. Like, I could see it. Zilean, however, is just kind of nuts. Like, for 2 mana, and this is great. This is basically the best news possible. Like, Zilean is just not a weak card. This is great. It's going to make Shurima a lot better. But it's just the ideal, like, low commitment predict synergy card, right? Like, it's a 2 mana predict. So it's sort of like Aspiring Chronomancer. You can just compare Zilean to Aspiring Chronomancer. It's got a 1/4 stat line instead of a 2/3 stat line. But of course, Zilean has all the bonuses. You know, you create the time bombs in your deck, and then he has a bit of a level up on top of that. If you can actually predict enough to get to those time bombs, then you are going to be in for a good time, right? So yeah, there will be a predict Zilean deck, and it's looking pretty good potentially. It's looking like one of the better ones. The time bombs are too expensive. So the time bombs, I wouldn't say are too expensive at all, right? I mean, they're 2 mana. They replace themselves with a card, right? So they cantrip themselves and deal 1 to all enemies and the enemy nexus, which really isn't bad. Another cute thing about time bombs is they have kind of like it's a similar kind of thing to like Blighted Ravine, which is that because they deal damage at the start of a round, you can't really dodge them with like certain things like being able to buff something or even spell shield, right? Like time bomb will go through spell shield because it's a landmark and spell shield doesn't stop landmarks. So there's Zilean is a great card. Overall, as for the rest of my initial impressions, Chronoshift is looking a little bit hard to use at 7 mana. I'm guessing that it will be, I mean, people will build it with Fiora. I'll build it with Fiora. I'm down. I still quite like Fiora, and I think that, you know, in certain metas, she can still be perfectly fine. But I don't see Chronoshift in how many other regions would actually be able to run this. Because this is a really interesting one. Like, it's super powerful in theory, but it would need to be a good champion. Lee Sin. Yeah, but so a lot of the decks that are built around specific champions, a lot of the decks that really need a champion to go off, usually those kinds of decks end up being the highest synergy decks and kind of usually incapable of flexing into a different color. Like Fiora might be able to go Shurima, but she will have a hard time doing so. And the same with Lee Sin, right? When you look at Lee Sin Chronoshift, you're not going to be able to run Lee Sin in Shurima for this. Targon is just too important for that. So I'm thinking Chronoshift is a little too pricey. But it's a really scalable card, so it'll definitely be able to hit some spots in some like niche situations. Scrying Sands is looking very powerful. I am guessing, so the devs have been talking about Shurima getting their staple card similar to other regions like staple spells for a while. And Scrying Sands really looks like it. It's just like, it looks like an auto-include staple combat trick that's just going to be able to kind of get like a good 2-for-1 in common situations. Not only are you getting free combat trick value for 1 mana, you're swinging a fight, which is great, and that'll happen pretty commonly. But and of course, you're getting to predict on top of that, right? Like Scrying Sands is just amazing. This will see play in most every Shurima deck. And Soothsayer is pretty great. I mean, I think that this card is going to be a little bit more fringe, but I love the fact that this card exists. I love the fact that we have the ability to protect our landmarks from landmark removal, which is a really important thing from yesterday's reveals. Because looking at all this advancement tech, we're still wondering what this advancement is for exactly, because it wasn't for Zilean, which, you know, we'll have to see. But looking at all this advancement tech, there have to be some big countdown landmarks, not Sundisk, but some like landmarks that are like countdown 15, countdown 20 that have very powerful builds around payoffs. But if Soothsayer wasn't in the game, being able to protect those would be really awkward and a little annoying. So I'm glad that this is an option. It's pretty cool. And of course, you know, we've got Zilean's Time Bomb, which is just part of Zilean himself, but a perfectly fine card. Like Zilean is pretty great. There's absolutely like just nothing really weak about Zilean. He is almost certainly gonna get there as a champion. All right, and yeah, I mean, I guess that's it for my initial impressions. You know, keep in mind, if you're watching on YouTube, I am going to go back and update these impressions. I changed the pinned comment. So, you know, make sure to check that out, because I'm going to spend the next couple of hours thinking about all the different ways I can use these cards. This is a really, really cool reveal. I will say, yesterday's reveal was kind of like, I mean, there's really nothing we could have said about these cards. There's a lot of interesting things going on. A lot of scalability. And I'm really happy that Zilean's nuts. That's so good. I can't wait to play him. All right. Perfect. So, do kegs work with landmark damage? This is it. This is where the ideas come rolling in, guys. How are we going to use these cards? What do you guys think? Are there some weird interactions or combos that I'm not seeing? Could Predict Go Hard be finally decent? So one of the big questions is like, okay, so Zilean is ran in a Predict deck, and we know that the Zilean Predict deck will at least be decent, right? We have no idea how good it'll be. Maybe it'll be tier 3. Maybe it'll be, I mean, if it finds a great home, maybe it'll be tier 1. But it'll be at least decent. It's not going to be lower than tier 3, right? So the question is, what would a Predict deck look like? What's the second region in a Predict deck? It might be Go Hard. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It could be Zilean Go Hard with Predicts. Yeah, I mean, you will be spamming a lot of Predicts. Who knows? Could be a lot of things. I don't think you're gonna run like the full Kahiri package. We really do want to avoid control F deck building, and we don't want to just like put Kahiri in because he says the word Predict on him. But I mean, given the fact that we have Zilean and Scrying Sands now, I mean, it'll certainly be less bad. TF draw with this. Twisted Fate with Predict. Yeah, I could see it. Zilean Ezreal to cast twice the spells thanks to level 2 Zilean. Alright, definitely don't do that though. We don't want to build strategies that the payoff revolves around having both of our champions on the board leveled up at the same time. Zilean is literally Kindred, good card, but has no deck to live. So I don't think that's necessarily true at all, actually. I completely disagree with that. I think Kindred is straight up a bad card. I think Kindred is not a good example of something that's like a card that doesn't have a home. Kindred is not a good card at all, actually. Zilean, so you might be right that Zilean might end up like looking good but not really having a home to fit in, but that's too early to say because his home revolves around these new cards, right? I don't think there's, I think Zilean will be good enough to have a home. He might fall short of tier 1, but Zilean is strong enough, and the Predict package is the single most competitive thing Shurima has right now, so absolutely, it's looking good. When I say single most competitive thing they have right now, I'm not really counting Thresh Nasus as a Shurima deck, because, I mean, there are a couple of Shurima cards. The fact that the Time Bombs are able to redraw you cards is the most important thing about them, by far. The fact that you're able to chain them is great. I guess I would say, if anything, the single worst thing about Zilean is probably the fact that when you draw second Zilean, it's Chronoshift. Champ spells, I think, are really, really important. A lot of people might kind of like underestimate how much it matters, a champ having a a champ spell that's not just a good card, but also kind of synergistic with like the board states where you have that champion on the board. And, you know, if you double draw Zilean, you'll always have a Chronoshift to protect the first Zilean if you want to, but Zilean's not usually going to be a good target for Chronoshifting. And Chronoshifting is going to be a very specific card to begin with. Isn't it better to kill the first Zilean than play the second Zilean for more bombs? Yeah, pretty much. That's going to be what you're going to do. So, I mean, you'll have to trade off its like 1/4 stat line if you have 2 Zileans and then play the second Zilean for more bombs. 100%. And then the second Zilean will have a pretty good time going off too, because it'll be able to, I mean, its initial deploy predict has a high chance of just finding one of the bombs already. And then you're going to have like 6 or 7 bombs in your deck to get into. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, honestly, given that, it is kind of bizarre, but you're actually right. Double drawing Zilean is not going to be that bad because you're almost always incentivized to just kill off the first one. It's going to be like a horny toad sort of situation where, like, I mean, you've got a 2-mana 1/4 that you kind of want to kill off, but sometimes a 2-mana 1/4 is kind of hard to trade off. But yeah, no, it's very true. It's very true. It's a good point. Okay. What other combos?